Our next project is a layered bracelet. You'll need yarn, scissors, a stitch marker or two, a stitch counter, a crochet hook, a tape measure, and a yarn needle. We're starting with the slip knot. Tighten onto your hook and create your first chain. Go ahead and put a stitch marker through this chain and then chain 5 more for a total of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we have 6 chains with a stitch marker in our first one. We'll count 2, 1, 2 chains and put a single crochet through the second one. Add another single crochet to the next stitch. Keep single crocheting down the row, and our last single crochet will go through the stitch that has the stitch marker in it. We'll keep the stitch marker right where it is and chain 1. We have 5 single crochets on our project so far. Count 2 stitches from your hook. The first one is that turning chain, and the second one is the first real stitch. And we'll create a single crochet in that stitch. Continue down the row, adding 1 single crochet through each stitch. At the end of every row, we'll have 5 single crochets. We'll do 1 more row of single crochets for a total of 3 rows. And now we've created the clasp for our bracelet. Now would be a good time to measure around your wrist using the tape measure. Just like we did for our chain bracelet. You'll see how long your wrist is. You'll measure the width of your wrist, mine's 7, and you'll add 1/2 inch, and that's going to be the length of your chain. So mine will be 7.5. Now you'll want to start chaining your bracelet. 24 chains is a good place to start. Using a stitch counter here will help you if you need to take pauses. I like to crochet 10 stitches at once, and then I can mark that I've done 10. So that way, in case I need to sit it down, walk away from it, I can stick this on the end of my hook here, and when I come back, I'll know I've made 10 stitches. I can mark down 20 stitches after another 10. I'll add 4 more. Now that I have 24, this would be a good time for me to measure how long it is. So you'll measure your bracelet from the short side of the clasp all the way till the end. Mine's showing it's about 7 inches right now, so I'm gonna add about 3 more chains. Looks like that might have made it just a little bit too long. No worries, I'll take my hook out. I'll pull out 1 chain and put my hook right back through that loop. Now see where our stitch marker is holding the place? I'm going to slip stitch right back into that spot, yarning over and pulling through both. I want to hold my place in the work, so I'm adding another stitch marker here so that the yarn can't come unraveled while I check the length. I'm using a different color so that I can remember the yellow is where I attach my chain and the pink's just holding my work. So let me check that size, and it's perfect. Not too tight and not too loose. Stretches over my wrist without falling off. If you try on your bracelet and it's too tight, you'll want to undo your slip stitch and add a few more chains, just like we did in our first chain bracelet. If it's too loose, undo the slip stitch and take a few chains out. Then you can redo the slip stitch and try it on again. We'll now use a slip stitch to move across our project. We've been working into this chain right here. So we'll slip stitch into the next one. And you'll want to chain the same number of stitches you used in your first bracelet. Again, here's where a stitch counter could be handy. I know my perfect bracelet size was 26 stitches. If I mark that on my stitch counter, I won't need to remember that number if I walk away from this project and come back to it a little bit later. I'll mark down 26, and I can keep this with my project. We're now going to attach this chain around to our second stitch on this side. See, we have our first stitch where this comes out of, so we want to count 1, 2, and do a slip stitch there, yarning over, pulling through, and pulling through again. Now we have 2 bracelets. At any point, remember, you can stick a stitch marker where your crochet hook is and try it on to make sure it's still fitting and you like the way it looks. I do, so let's keep going. Pull that stitch marker up a bit to give you more of a loop to put your hook through. Once you do, you can keep working. Slip stitch into the next stitch and chain that number of stitches you need for your perfect bracelet. Did you forget? You can just look on your stitch counter. Same thing here, we're gonna slip stitch back onto this other side. Find that third chain. Find the third chain, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, We now have 3 bracelet chains on our clasp. You can slip stitch into the next and begin chaining again. For our 4th chain, we're attaching it back to the side with our single crochets. So slip stitch into that 4th single crochet, and then slip stitch into the 5th one to move your hook all the way to the end of the clasp. You know the drill. We're chaining 9, 10 until we get that perfect number of chains for the size of your wrist. This is our last bracelet chain, and there should just be one more spot to attach it. In that last chain in your row, put your hook in, and then slip stitch it on. To finish, we'll chain 1, leave a nice long tail, and pull the yarn tail through. We can take this stitch marker out of our work now. And you can try on your bracelet. If you like the way it looks, all that's left to do now is weave in these ends to the clasp. You can take the yarn tail and through that last row of stitches, weave it 3 times so it doesn't come undone. You'll do it with your second tail as well. If you pull too tight, you'll distort the clasp, but if you leave it too loose, it won't be secure. So find that perfect tension where the yarn isn't coming out. And then on your last pass through, you can take your scissors After you finish weaving in and trimming all of the ends, you've finished your layered bracelet.